Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Play Choices podcast, the podcast you hear. I'm your host, V. So today we're going to be doing another Choices chat. So as a reminder, these Choices chats are not kept to one book, so we may bring up spoilers for any book in the Choices app. So if that does make you uncomfortable, please feel free to join us on another episode where the format is more focused. I'm so honored. I don't think I can overstate how overdue I think this conversation is. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So my name's Eric. Twitter, I go by @EricMitch. And I'm just really happy to be here. Big fan of the show. A little disappointed because I thought I was with Lucas instead of V, but I guess I'll just have to deal with V.
Yeah, I'm really the consolation prize. That's what everyone says before recording. They're like, oh, Lucas isn't going to be joining us? And I'm like, nah.
What?
He's kind of like really popular, so his schedule is like really booked. And so I'm like his secretary. I'm like, yeah, if you can't fill in, I'll do it for you. No worries.
I feel like he's like the mystery guy because you're on the social media and then he's just on the chats. Everybody, like, he's like a mystery to everybody.
He is a little bit of a mystery. I don't know. Like, he has like notifications to stuff turned on specifically for like Instagram, so he doesn't really see like the Tumblr and like Twitter interaction. So it's kind of fun to show him that because it's just like a part of it he doesn't really follow. And I've brought up the idea of him like joining on social media, but I don't know if he really has an interest in it because I brought it up like once, and I feel like if he wanted to, he would have done it. So I'm like, I'm just not gonna push it. And then he joined us like one time on stream.
Yeah, I did see him on one of the. I think it was the one you ended up playing Taboo for a bit, which was a mess.
Yeah, no, that was a nightmare. We almost don't even talk about that anymore at this point. Kind of banned it. Like I think because like on when you stream you can like ban certain words. I might just ban Taboo.
Taboo is taboo.
Yeah, exactly. This is also a time for me to selfishly plug that I do stream. So if you want to follow me on twitch.tv/playchoicespodcast, it's very fun. We stream at 7 p.m. EST Romance Club every week on Tuesdays.
Sometimes the chat gets a little crazy because some weirdos in the chat.
Yeah.
Not naming any names. Not me. But there are other weirdos. There's other weirdos in the chat.
Definitely not Eric.
I try to keep it calm. I try to keep everybody calm, and everybody else goes a little crazy.
Right, and Eric is actually so calm on chat that I've been thinking of making him a moderator because he's just so in control of himself and other people. I definitely didn't threaten to ban him last time.
I was just complimenting your room. That's not my fault.
It was jokingly.
I was being nice.
It was jokingly. If you don't know what we're talking about, then you need to go to our YouTube and watch the replay. I think it was like we started from like season 2, episode 3 of Heaven's Secret, and like really, if you want to see where the drama went down, I would say kind of watch the last like 45 minutes of the replay. That's really where Eric really just started, making some side comments to me.
Everybody started picking on me. I was
it was, you know what? That was the funniest part of it, is that you started picking on me and then the chat turned against you. It was like my favorite part of the entire interaction.
Jacob had my back. Everybody else was enemy number.
Yeah.
I was enemy number 1 to everybody else. Jacob had my back. I always got Jacob.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's funny too because I just recently switched over to like a different streaming platform, like a different I don't know what it's called, stream client or whatever it is. And I think there's the advantage of like doing polls and stuff on there. So I was like, let me figure out how to do a poll so I can ask how many people want to ban Eric from chat. I think that would be hilarious.
Even had people sending you links on how to ban people. That's how bad people are.
Oh yeah, no, Ari got on chat and yeah.
Like,
Ari got on chat and she's like, here's how you can ban people.
Here's how you do it.
No, it was so funny because I think like earlier in the chat there was like some random bot or something that like entered the chat, and I was like trying to figure out how to delete the message. I was like, I can't do it. I can't. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it was the one that was like, this is how you can get all these followers. I was like, where did you
Yeah,
come
there. I
from?
was like,
What are
well,
you
it's
doing
kind of
here?
insulting because they really only send those. They only send those messages to like people who don't have followers. So I was like, fuck you. Like, I have followers.
I have just as many followers as I want. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I have the exact number of followers that I desire. That's right. I only want
My
20.
followers are loyal. My followers,
Yeah.
I have 20, but they're 20 loyal followers.
20, the best 20 followers that I have. So I was trying to figure out how to delete it, but I'm really bad at like figuring out technical issues on the fly. So I was like, fuck it, I guess the spam will just stay there. And then literally in the last 45 minutes, Ari was like, here's a link to like everything, like how you delete everything from chat. And I was like, this is amazing. I was like, I wish that I had this at the beginning of the stream. Yeah, it's really fun if you do want to join us. Eric, I don't think you've really missed a stream yet. I don't think so.
Not one of yours.
Yeah.
I've seen them all for what you've done with Women's Chat since I got to initiate the Andy voice.
Right. If you want to join us 7 p.m. Tuesdays EST, Eric is always there, so you can always guarantee it's going to be me. Eric's going to be in the passenger seat, kind of, making his little sly comments, and we all mutually hate on Andy from Heaven's Secret because he's a creep.
They make it so easy.
Yeah, they make it really easy to bully his character. Do you have anything you want to say to like just introduce yourself and how long you've been playing Choices, how you kind of stumbled across, I guess, like because you're primarily on Twitter, correct?
Yeah, most of my interactions on Twitter.
First of all, how did you find out Choices? How long you've been playing it, and like how did you kind of get into like the Twitter fandom?
So I was pretty early on in launch, pretty much when the Freshman launched, which I don't remember if it was it's definitely one of the first books, the Freshman.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing Temple Run and I got an ad for Choices and I was like, I'm bored of Temple Run, I'll try it. And then I enjoyed the Freshman and Hero. And as far as Twitter, I don't even remember how it happened, but I ended up sending a screenshot that I thought was really funny. And then all these people started commenting on it, and then slowly I became part of the Twitter community.
Nice. So you would say the Twitter fandom found you, you know? Is
Yeah,
that how you would phrase it?
Yeah, like I did a screenshot, and then I commented on a few of Choice's tweets, kind of mocking them a little bit like I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly people started following me, and I followed back. Or if I seen somebody that was funny, I was like, "Oh, I'll follow you because what you post about Choices is funny." And then slowly, the community started building up, and I mean, at this point, I probably enjoy talking to people about Choices more than I enjoy playing it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's probably the case for me too. I mean, it's both fun to like make fun of it, but it's also fun to be like, hey, wasn't that chapter like actually kind of good though?
Yeah, like there's some of the most hated books are the ones that I have the best conversations about with people.
I think you listened to our last episode that went live on like the nanny affair, right? And like it's a book that I somewhat enjoy. Like I wouldn't say that I love it, but it is like a kind of a I would call it a guilty pleasure, but I don't feel guilty about it at all. And it's a book that you hate. And like I think you kind of walked away from the episode being like, I actually kind of enjoyed that conversation, even though we feel kind of different about the subject matter of the book.
Yeah, like I had tweeted, one of the things I tweeted was, some of the things you were saying, I agreed with how you felt about the book, like some of the critiques you had, and it's strange to have the same opinion like that when I really don't care for the book, and like you said, you don't love it, but you enjoy it. I don't really enjoy it at all, but we can have the same critiques about it.
I definitely think like not that I mean it's a visual novel app, right? So it's not like you have to have like deeper thoughts or like a discussion about like themes and motifs and shit, right? Like it's an app. But I think just the conversations you can kind of get into, like I think that's where kind of like the fleshiness comes from in these type of discussions, and I think that that's like why I enjoy recording the podcast, because it's like I couldn't, and I did for many years, just read the book and kind of went, oh, okay. I either enjoy that or I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I remember someone, like, we recorded a Q&A a couple weeks back, and they're like, what kind of made you want to record the podcast, right? And it was like at the time when I recorded the first episode, I mean, it was because there were some like really great books coming out that I really wanted to discuss. But that kind of motivation kind of like falls to the wayside when Choices goes through like a dead period, right? Like if there's no good books that you love, then it's like, how do you sustain a conversation about something that you hate? And then I was like, wait, me and Lucas do this like literally all the time where like we watch a TV show and we're like, that was really fucking bad. Like we do this all of the time. And so it just kind of like came along naturally where I was like, I mean, we do this for literally any movie or video game or TV show that we both consume at the same time. Why wouldn't it also work for Choices or like any other type of like visual novel app, right?
Yeah, like absolutely. One of the good things of looking at bad content is talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things I enjoy most is looking at one of the worst books, let's say My First Two Loves, and saying, this is where I think it should go, and then being totally wrong with what they actually do with it.
Yeah.
And what I come up with, that would be an amazing storyline, and then it goes nowhere close to that.
And it's funny having Lucas on because like he has like we're reading Open Heart right now and he has no idea what the fuck happens in that.
At this point, like right now, I have 104 completed books, so I've literally finished every completed book, including the Spanish ones.
Holy shit. I was wondering how you got to 104. I remember a couple of days ago you had told me you had 103, and I was like, I didn't even know they had over like 100 books.
They're over 100 English books, but now there's 2 rural romance in Spanish. The first Bloodbound and the first Red Carpet Diaries are all in Spanish.
Yes.
And completed.
Yes.
So those would be the 4 Spanish ones. So there's actually, whatever was the last book to finish, Open Heart or Baby Bump, whichever one was the last one to finish would be the 100th English book that's completed.
Oh, it's kind of dark that Open Heart 3 is their 100th book. You would think it'd be a larger milestone.
Yeah, because I think Open Heart 3 ended after Baby Bump 2. Either way, either one is 100, just seems sad.
Yeah, no. That's a whole different conversation.
There's probably a reason why they didn't like celebrate it. Like, this is the 100th book. Like, do we really want to announce that Open Heart 3 or Baby Bump 2 is our 100th completed book?
No, you don't, because, I mean, they just get fucking roasted on Twitter. Holy shit. The other thing I want to ask you is, Eric, how did you hear about the podcast?
Somebody shared it on Twitter, and I remember I subscribed, but then you were talking about, the first episode you posted after I subscribed was the Nanny Affair. I'm like, well, I'm not going to listen to that, but I stayed subscribed. And then it popped up Choices Chat. The first Choices Chat with Kathy was the first episode I listened to. Because I was like, well, if they're going to talk about everything, I've played everything, so I'm not going to be spoiled.
Right.
But I was like, I don't want to listen to 2 people talk about the Nanny Affair, because I don't like the Nanny Affair. And then the first Choices Chat was hilarious. And then I went back and listened to everything else.
So you gave us a chance. You gave us a second chance.
Well, Choices Chat is what won it for you. It's a good thing you went that way, or we might not be friends talking.
I know, you may not have been here. Thank God.
But then I started sharing your stuff, and we started having a dialogue, and here I am now. Get to be the 3rd guest host.
Well, Eric, not to get sappy or anything, I always do appreciate you sharing. I think I brought this up, but like I love on like a Saturday, like I'll wake up, you have like 3 tweets talking about like what your reactions to the podcast. I'm always like, this is nice. This is nice to wake up to.
Yeah, I mean, like, every Saturday morning I take my dog for a walk. Usually I used to listen to true crime, and walking 6 in the morning listening to true crime is the best thing to do. The sun's not even fully up yet, and you get freaked out by true crime looking over my shoulder. It's a little better to laugh to you and Lucas at 6:30 in the morning, even if my neighbors.
Well, I always do appreciate you, and you've definitely become one of my, more favorable people to interact with on Twitter. You and I have fun DMs back and forth. Like, you had prepared your own list of questions you wanted to go through, right?
Yeah.
All right, for context, for listeners, generally when people guest host with me, the Choices Chat, I kind of take it as an opportunity for the guest to kind of prepare what topics they want to discuss. So it's more so like almost like they're hosting and I'm not. I'm kind of taking the position of where Lucas would typically sit, right? If you are interested in guest hosting, just kind of hop into my email. It's playchoicespodcast@gmail.com if you ever want to take a stab at it. I think it's fun. I think the past choices chats we had have been fun. Hopefully this is just as fun. I think it will be.
One thing I will say for people who send you emails, don't be scared off if that first email is really awkward.
Oh yeah, no, trust me. Like
the first email we sent to each other was 2 really awkward emails.
Oh, it is.
I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like, it's really.
I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
It's really awkward reading this email, and writing the email was awkward. I'm like, oh, I love you. I love the podcast.
I've never talked to you before, but I listen to you every week.
I'm a big fan of Lucas.
Yeah, not really into V, but thanks for editing the podcast, girl.
Yeah, I don't really, that V one's there, but Lucas is the star.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I will say I understand that there's inherent awkwardness in life, right? Like I've just kind of accepted that life is very uncomfortable, and it is what it is. And whatever amount of awkwardness you feel in emailing me, just know I feel that same amount of awkwardness. So it's not like you're standing there, holy shit, I don't know what to email V. I don't know what to say. This is gonna be so weird. She's gonna think I'm weird because every single time I email someone, I'm like, they're gonna think I'm fucking weird.
It gets so much better as you go.
Absolutely.
You get a good back and forth, and now I feel comfortable tossing you concepts for, whether it's something that I get to help with or just something you and Lucas get to do. Like, hey, you guys should try this on the podcast. I have no problem sending you that stuff now.
That's a good point too. If you ever have any ideas of content you'd like to see on the podcast, I literally have a full document of list of ideas. It's just a matter of when we can actually execute them. So if you ever have any ideas, if you're like, hey, I'd like to see someone discuss this, I'm totally down for it. Just let me know. You can hit me up on my socials or my email for that kind of stuff. But generally, if you want to guest host, I do request that you kind of keep it to email. It's a little bit easier for me to organize.
At least the start.
Yeah. So, let's hop into the content you prepared, Eric.
Yeah, so I came up with 10 questions, and I think you added one today. So 11 questions just to discuss. I mean, even if we don't get through all the questions, they can, we'll be able to build off of them with discussion, which I think is pretty much always happens.
Yep.
So the first one I came up with, to you, what is the perfect choices book?
Do you mean because I feel like there's different ways to interpret this. Do you mean something that I feel really encapsulates the essence of choices, or just what my favorite book is?
I mean, whether it's favorite or, really, to me, it's the book that I can play multiple times, not get sick of. I could play with diamonds, without diamonds.
I feel definitely, and maybe this is some recency bias because I also watch Martian Cat on Twitch, right? So if you don't know, Martian Cat is a streamer. She streams choices every Thursday.
She's amazing.
7:30 my time. She's great. I try to tune in every week. She's replaying Perfect Match right now. I definitely think Perfect Match is in the realm of books that are perfect, and pun not intended. I think it's just great plot-wise. I think they do a really good job of managing a thrilling and exciting plot, along with great love interest and a set of love interests that are very dynamic. I think they're all different enough from each other that they don't feel repetitive. Ride or Die. I mean, anyone who's ever listened to the podcast knows how much I fucking love Ride or Die. I have to put it up there.
You ride or die for Ride or Die.
Yeah, I am. It's just one of those things that speaks to me so personally. The plot takes you for a loop. You think it's one thing and then it ends up being a whole other thing. And I think too, I'm kind of a sucker for the imperfect endings. I love a sad ending that just leaves you yearning for something more. There's something that's amazingly heart-wrenching about it, and that's what I really love about Ride or Die. What is your perfect choices book?
For me, it's With Every Heartbeat. The first time I played it, I played through the whole thing without diamonds. And a lot of times if you play without diamonds, you're not getting a good story, you're getting the bare minimum. But I absolutely loved it without diamonds. And I'm like, you know what? I love this so much. I went back and played the whole book, taking every diamond choice.
Yeah, I don't think, because I definitely played through the entire thing. I had a VIP for 1 month and played With Every Heartbeat. during that month. And I definitely don't. Maybe I did spend some diamonds because they kind of give you like a big boost of diamonds whenever you first get VIP.
Yeah, I see with VIP, I do this thing. I'm gonna give a little trick to people if they don't know it, but I never let it renew. If you don't let it renew and then repurchase yourself, you get the 185 each time.
Oh yeah, no, I remember someone saying that.
Yeah, and I don't do it the next day. It depends what book it is. Like I think I had it for like 2 months in a row, and then I took a break for a few months because I didn't really care for one of the books.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got it back. I think the unexpected here is I didn't care for it at first. Eventually, I got back into it, and it got really good towards the end of the book. But I didn't care about it at first. And same with Miss Mac, I didn't care for it. But I ended up enjoying it for as, it was good. I mean, neither one I thought was great, but I enjoyed them enough to finish them out. And they're definitely in like the upper echelon of choices books.
Okay, before we get on with the rest of the chapter, let me interrupt with some plugs. So you can leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/play-choices-podcast/message. It could show up in a future episode. You can also directly support this podcast at anchor.fm/play-choices-podcast/support. If we haven't convinced you yet, listen to this amazing, amazing commercial that Lucas and I put together for you. It takes me hours. It takes me, no, keep singing. It takes me hours to record. No, keep doing it. It takes me hours to record and edit this podcast. And with your donation of $1 a month, could save V from smashing her fucking head into a wall. Thank you so much. And back to our episode. A lot of people kind of hold with every heartbeat very, very close to their. Jesus Christ, I just keep making puns. I was just going to say very close to their heart.
Whatever works.
I know. It's not necessarily that I don't like the book. I did enjoy it. It just, I don't know, it just kind of failed to kind of like touch me in the way that I think it touched a lot of people. Like it's definitely sad. I would agree with that, but it just didn't kind of like floor me, I think. I definitely think remind me what the ally's name is again? Dakota. I definitely think Dakota is definitely one of the best allies that they've created.
It's like the perfect example of what a single love interest book should be.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is nobody else in the book that I'm like, oh, I'd rather be with this person. Like, you look at other single interest books, like Man with the, I'd rather be with Robin, or right now I'd rather be with Jordan. I mean, not everybody. I'm sure there's plenty of people that love Sam, but I'm like, I'd rather be with Robin. With that book, and same with Fairy Stanley's Proposal, both of those books are the perfect example of what I think a single love interest book should be, where you actually want to be with the love interest they have.
I've no, I still need to play through ABSP. That one I started, but I feel like I've been kind of sleeping on.
Well, now they made it a weekly release.
I don't know why I haven't gotten around to it yet. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they just did a weekly because they have no other content right now, and they're like, we need something, so let's just make this
absolutely.
VIP book weekly.
Well, I remember like when they released With Every Heartbeat, they released it all at once, right?
Yeah, same with Hot Couture. It was
Yeah.
all released at the same time. And with this, they decided to do weekly. I really just think it's because they have no real content right now. They needed something to on a weekly basis.
Yeah. I definitely think that that's the case because beforehand, I remember like when With Every Heartbeat released, I'd already played it by the time that everyone else had it released to the public, but I remember, I mean, people were like speed running that fucking book. Like, and people would finish it in like a day with VIP. I was like, this is insane.
Well, it had so much hype by like when I went to play it, and I remember I played it a few chapters. I'm like, oh, this is a great book, and then I just kept going, and then before I knew it, I was wrecked. And then when you get to the end, I had to take a break. I'm like, I need a break. That just wrecked me.
I enjoyed it, but I didn't I don't know, I feel like there's assassination that's kind of with it in the fandom that was missing for me for some reason.
I mean, it's like anything. Like, a lot of people love, what's that John Green book that was made into a movie?
what is it? The Fault in Our Stars? That's what it's
That's it.
called.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I didn't care for that movie at all. And I mean, really, it's almost the same plot line of what With Every Heartbeat is. And I love this, and I really didn't care for that movie.
Well, I definitely think that that's like very common in Choices books where you realize that it's basically a carbon copy of like a movie. Or like Open Heart, like a carbon copy of what is it called? Grey's
Grey's
Anatomy?
Anatomy.
Yeah.
I did a thread. I don't know if I did a thread or I'm like, oh, this is the week they do this Grey's Anatomy storyline.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some people have been saying, like, I've never watched How to Get Away with Murder, but a lot of people have been saying that it's very like very similar to like Laws of Attraction in certain ways. I've seen that comparison a handful of times, not as frequent as I've seen the
I
comparison between Open Heart and Grey's
don't
Anatomy.
see that comparison. Maybe once the murder trial starts,
Mm-hmm.
but in the first few chapters, it's totally Laws of Attraction is totally different. Like I expected the murder trial to start right away. I mean, I enjoy it for
Yeah.
what it is. I like the concept of doing the flings, which allows the main love interest to be a slow burn without forcing either one. Like we were talking earlier on Twitter, like Jacob had mentioned he thought that Gabe was the forced ally, and I'm like, well, I don't see it. I just don't see either one of Gabe or Ashlyn being forced in this book. And I think they were able to do that because they gave the option of flings.
Yeah. I definitely think the flings mechanic is something that they should keep in the book because I think it makes the slow burn a little bit more like bearable. Because something that kind of irritates me is like I do really enjoy a slow burn, but sometimes it's like for example, Ride or Die. I understand why the character from a personality standpoint, why it makes sense for her to like not have been as like kind of sexually forward. But sometimes I'm like, damn, we're never gonna see those allies. Like I only got two scenes. Two. And it's really if you romance Mona, it's only one.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I didn't care for Logan or Colt and I love Mona, and we really don't get enough with her. I don't know, which is the case with a lot of the female love interests.
I would call it female ally syndrome. Is just when you never really see them at all. Which I think like to your point when we were talking about laws of attraction earlier on Twitter, like I just it's hard for me. Like I can see how people can kind of lean into saying like, "Oh yeah, no, I definitely think that Gabe is a forced ally." But to me, it's like I feel like we get too much, and maybe it's just because I'm so conditioned to like barely giving like a drop of any female ally. But I feel like we get a lot of interaction with Ashlyn in comparison to Gabe.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare diamond scenes, yes, Gabe has more diamond scenes, but you interact with Ashlyn a lot because you're working on
Yeah.
trial on cases with her. So you have a lot of interaction. You just don't. There just aren't diamond options.
And plus, it's like I think like also too if you play all of the Gabe scenes, like oh God, we've talked about this on on our episodes, but like Ashlyn, she just kind of like blushes and she's like, "Let's talk about this outside of work. Right now, we have to focus on a case." And Gabe was
Which is
like in
good.
your
I like
face,
that.
and I like it. I love it. Like I think that's really how most kind of like office romances would kind of start, right? But like with Gabe, he's so like hot and heavy and then immediately cold that I feel like
But
it does kind of translate to it feeling like they're forcing or maybe that they're making the romance kind of more direct. But I think like I really haven't seen that many people who are like into Gabe's like Pikachu shocker powers. Like I think most people kind of roll their eyes at the dialogue.
oh, absolutely.
It's not necessarily working for them, I don't think.
No, there's definitely gay people who like Gabe. The hot and cold thing just doesn't work.
No, and it's not that you can't be hot and cold, but I feel like it has to be believable. Like, I feel like, okay, some of you might roll your eyes at this. Eric, you might know what direction I'm going in. But, like, when we play Heaven's Secret, I feel like the Lucifer character is a much more believable version of the hot and cold that we get than like Gabe.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense for Lucifer. He's literally the devil.
Well, it's like one, he's the devil, but I also think like even if you take out the whole like demon aspect of it, and let me just provide some context. I don't know if everyone who plays Choices has played Romance Club, but like And there's another visual novel app called Romance Club where there is a character. It's like it's a book called Heaven's Secret, and of course because it's about heaven, there's like angels and demons, and Lucifer is a love interest in there. But I think even outside of Lucifer being a demon, I think you can just create a character that has like the same personality and kind of have it where it's like, is he flirting with me because he likes me? Or are they flirting with me because they're like making fun of me and joking? Like I can't quite tell. And then you kind of add in these little moments of sweetness where you're like, okay, this is becoming kind of more genuine, a little bit more believable. Whereas like Gabe just like gets in your face and he's like, I bet you would like it if I kissed you right now. And then he just like backs up to the corner of the corner of the car and he's like, I'm not gonna do that.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm your boss.
Yeah, he's like, it's a little bit risky for me to do that right now.
Like your last string, like it was for I forget exactly what happened, but he like picked up your main character and carried her out away from the crowd. He's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, don't be an idiot." And walks away. I'm like,
yeah,
that makes sense. Like he showed a little soft moment, but then he's like, "Oh, I can't be soft because
yeah.
I'm Lucifer."
You have to create these moments, and it's not necessarily because like Lucifer has moments where he pulls away, but it's like it fits more. I don't know. It's hard to kind of vocalize what the difference is between like those little kind of niche smaller moments and how like Romance Club does them really well in Heaven's Secret, and how like I feel like Laws of Attraction isn't doing it so well with Gabe. Just the way they've kind of written him like being in your face. I think the reason why it bothers me is because those like in your face kind of moments only happen in diamond scenes. Whereas like with Lucifer, that personality is kind of consistent throughout the entire book.
Yeah, right from the start.
Yeah, he's poking fun at you, he's teasing you, yada yada yada. But with Gabe, he's like so like clean cut and professional. The moments where he gets in your face is like, what the fuck is going on? Like it's a little bit too much and makes it kind of not believable, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Realistically, he definitely would have kissed you, and then maybe back up, but not be like, "I want to kiss you," and then be like, "I'm not gonna do it." Like, who does that?
Yeah. He's like, I'd really like to kiss you right now. I bet you'd really like if I kissed you right now. And then he like brushes his lips against yours 3 times and backs up and is like, never mind. I thought about it. And I calculated the risk in my head and I didn't like the odds.
It's next one. Which book has the most ridiculous storyline? First one, Mismatch. Not sure how much you care about spoilers for Mismatch. But it starts off with a bartender somehow getting a chance to compete to be a CEO of a matchmaking company.
What?
That's the premise of the book.
Okay.
Like somehow she worms her way into being able to compete to be CEO of a company, from bartender to CEO. Ridiculous.
Interesting.
Number 2 on my list is my first 2 loves, the whole college entrance scandal. Have you played through the whole book?
Yes, I did. I played through the whole book and I remember what you're talking about.
I don't mind that they did it. I was listening to the Kath episode, the First Choices chat, and you guys talked about how, they like to take something real well. Red Carpet Diaries did Me Too. My first 2 loves did Police Brutality. So I understand why they did it. You got high school students getting ready to go to college. Just the execution of having the main character with the school board basically being a lawyer. Like, that's not how you would deal with this. You would involve the FBI. You wouldn't go to the school board with this.
Yeah.
This whole trial thing makes no sense to me. It just doesn't work. The execution of it didn't make sense. And then number 1 is easily rules of engagement. Yeah. What they have to jump through to get that inheritance. The only one that made sense was one of the twins who just had to have a job. Show that you can be an adult and I'll give you your inheritance. Be an adult by holding a job. But you got the brother and the sister having to, either get engaged or get married. And I can kind of understand the other twin having to do their bucket list, because it's basically like, go live life and then you can have your money. I can understand that one. But having to get married to get your inheritance is just stupid.
I feel like a lot of books kind of play off this idea of like, if you want to get this will, you have to do this, this, and this. But like realistically, it's like that's not really how wills work. Like you can't really force someone to perform an action in order to get money. It's not really how that works.
All I would say is, if I was the sibling who just had to have a job, I would be
That
like,
would be
hey,
so.
I'm not going to force you to meet somebody and get married within a month. I will give you some money. I can hold
Yeah.
out a job. I'll get because they did it like, if only one person does it, they'll get like all five or six because you got the cousin too.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's split between whoever meets their objectives. So I'm like, don't worry about getting married. Once I complete mine, I'll give you some money. Like, I'm not gonna leave you
Yeah.
broke because you didn't get married in a month and have to go meet somebody on a cruise.
No, and it's such an uncomfortable premise too. I mean, I guess like right at the time that the grandmother died, she was still engaged to her prior fiance, right? So I guess from the grandmother's knowledge, it's not that far off of a timeline, but like, what an uncomfortable premise to like basically be like, hey, anybody that I'm dating, I need to get married in the next like. That was there like a deadline?
They had like the summer.
So stupid.
She had to get married by the end of the summer. The brother had to be engaged by the end of the summer. Jess had to hold a job for the whole summer, and then the other twin had to complete a bucket list of things that the grandmother put on the list.
Like, in a way, that's probably the worst thing that you can do to your grandchild, right? Is to like tell them like just get married to fucking anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, lock yourself into a lifelong commitment to get like a I mean, I don't know if it was really petty amount of money, but to get a petty amount of money. Like,
I feel like it was a good amount of it. And then you got like the aunt. Like, nobody's aunt's that evil. I'm sorry.
yeah.
To murder your niece, I'm gonna make a hole in your boat that they're gonna be going across the ocean. Like, even you're like, I'm just trying to slow you down so you don't happen. You're just no, that's attempted murder. You should be in jail.
Yeah. I think the royal romance. I know there's a lot of diehard fans, but you were like what, like a bartender or something, and then you just so happened to like serve a prince, and now the prince is like offering. Well, I don't know if it was the prince; it might have been Maxwell or something. But like someone in his posse like offers you the chance to be like courted by a prince.
Yeah, it was Maxwell brought
Yeah.
her in because he's like, oh, you had a moment with the prince. He was flirting with you. We don't have somebody to put through, so you're gonna be so out.
Absolutely ridiculous of a plot line. Like I think that was like one of the first books that I played because obviously I feel like they kind of pushed the royal romance. I think it's like one of the first books they recommend on the app if you're kind of like a new player. At least it was at the time that I had joined. And it was just like, okay, I'm a bartender and now I'm gonna go be a princess. I feel like a lot of it isn't the premise, like you said, it's the execution that bothers me about these books, not necessarily the premise. So now, if you had asked me about execution, that's a whole other fucking story. I could have a full list of things that I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's a lot. So, what's one change you would make to a book that you think would make it better? So, I got two. First one's
Okay.
Nanny of Your Book 2. Right now, MC's jobless, and they
Correct.
hire a nanny. I mean, so far in the book, she's basically being the nanny anyway. She took the kids to school, she took them to the park. Instead of hiring Jordan as a nanny, I think it would have been better to keep her as, don't even have to call her a nanny. Like, she could just be like a housewife or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Make Jordan a parent at the school, who you meet when you bring the kids to the school, and then you get close to a parent at the school. I would have enjoyed that better personally. Like, and as much as I like the nanny affair, because again, I've said like I don't really care, but
Right.
I think the concept of meeting somebody at the school and the other parent seeing what you're going through and you're just getting close to another parent at the school, even though we all know it's a single love interest book no matter what, but you get close to somebody who might be married to somebody else. And you can still have that storyline where you're getting close to somebody and they tease that you might cheat on Sam, even though I really don't see it happening. My other one would be the way they wasted Ava in My First Two Loves. 75 chapters
Yeah.
before she's actually a love interest.
Yep. I definitely agree with that.
And honestly, I don't care what they say. I do not believe Ava was written originally as a love interest. I think they wrote the book with Mason and Noah and then realized we can't release this without having a female love interest.
Didn't it go like on hiatus too? And that was like after the
It went on
hiatus was when
hiatus twice.
Yeah, it went on hiatus, and after the second one was when Ava kind of like came kind of more like front and center into being an ally. Mine would be Foreign Affairs, which is kind of like a bold choice because to be honest with you, I really haven't read past the chapters we've done an episode on. But For the love of God, please, the one thing that I would change would be taking it out of the fucking school setting. It's so hard to believe that any of this actually has consequences when we're like students. All of our choices are just impacting our mother's career. It would have been great if, like, I mean, you could have made the MC like a junior politician and like their job is to go negotiate, like attend negotiation stuff with like other rival countries. And I feel like that would have led to a much bigger scandal because
Make it like a UN type.
yeah, like you could have made, instead of waiting until like the very end to kind of like have the, and I haven't finished the plot line, so maybe there's some details about this I'm gonna get wrong. But like they talk about how there's like this whole summit that everyone has to prepare for. Everyone has to be ready for the summit, right? If they had just made it so the actual plot was like, hey, we're going to a summit. You're going to go through negotiations, and like the negotiation and the relationships you make during the summit are going to like transform the ending. And it's not like it has to be like Cross the Void where there's like 4 different endings. It could just be like, oh, you partnered with this country and this country, so like therefore your country's going to be able to benefit from this. You guys can introduce this to like your citizens or something. Like it could have been something that like really you just kind of add at the very end with like no real kind of consequence to deal with. But that would have made it feel so much more impactful, because like we're in school and they're like, oh my god, don't hang out with Blaine, and I'm like, who gives a fuck? Like, we're students.
I mean, what you just said is basically what I thought the book was going to be.
Yeah.
And that was not what we got. It's basically the freshmen.
Yeah, basically.
Are you at the point where you know what the scandal is yet?
I mean, I've seen the spoilers for it, so I know, and it's so stupid.
Let's add that to your ridiculous storyline. Because
Yeah.
I'm sorry, nobody cares about 2 young people skinny dipping. That's not a scandal.
No, it's not as big of a scandal, and honestly, it's like politicians in real life have done like way fucking worse and like still had careers after it. So
It's like, oh, it's a scandal. He went swimming.
yeah, she went swimming in a lake. It's so stupid. All right, before we move on to the rest of the chapter, let me interrupt to plug our socials. We are at Play Choices Podcast on Instagram and at Play Choices Pod on Twitter. You can also go to playchoicespodcast.tumblr.com for our Tumblr page, which is where I post any episode notes that I have, like links to posts I've mentioned, photos I've mentioned, or more. We're also available for listening on all major platforms, so if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate, review, and subscribe. It's a funky thing with the algorithm that helps us a lot. I wish I could explain it more in depth, but I just know that it helps us, so we do appreciate any reviews that you leave us. And as always, we are a growing podcast, so if you see us pop up on your socials, we do appreciate a share, a retweet, or a reblog, depending on the platform you see us on. We also appreciate it when you share our podcast with your fellow choices-loving friends. And now, back to the episode.
Alright, so next one. Who is the character you changed your mind about after finding out more information about them?
I think probably my first kind of impression is Ava. Super into her. I mean, they kind of gave her such a horrible plot line, right? Because she's just such a bitch. I mean, not in the very beginning, but I mean, like her personality. Even when you guys are just friends in like the first couple of chapters, like she's not super warm.
So, which Ava are we talking about? My First Two Loves?
Oh,
Ava?
I'm sorry, My First Two Loves. She immediately starts to date like your childhood crush, which like puts like a big conflict, even though she doesn't know it's a big conflict at first. Immediately puts a big conflict from the MC.
I think that really ties into my theory that when they originally wrote the book, Ava was not a love interest.
Because they made her out to be public enemy number 1 just because she dated Mason.
Her original storyline was going to be, you're not my best friend anymore because you want my boyfriend. And then I think before they released it, they realized there's no way we can release a book right now without having a female love interest. So, and I think that's the reason they had 2 hiatuses, because they're like, we have to try to figure out how to rewrite this to make Ava a love interest.
Yeah, after the rewrite, when she started opening up and she was like, yeah, it was because of this I was acting this way, and like I apologized to you, and then she was like being super open to MC kind of like exploring her own sexuality and kind of like getting comfortable with it. It was at that point where I stopped being irritated with Ava and I was more so irritated with the MC, who had honestly been really fucking irritating from the beginning. So she really won me over because in the beginning I was kind of like hardcore Noah. I was like, oh my God, I love Noah. He is great, yada, yada, yada. They kind of wrote his character into a little bit of a hole. He just started getting like super aggro and was just kind of exploding at everyone. And I was like, this isn't attractive. Whereas Ava kind of had like a level head throughout everything. She had like just the right amount of like aggression and sass to make her interesting without making her, because I feel like oftentimes we've talked about this before, how like the female allies kind of, how do I say it? They kind of get put into the stereotypical, she's super sweet and like innocent basket. And like, that's just not really the kind of ally that I go towards. Oftentimes, also feel like that's probably what kind of leads me away from them. It's a combination of the fact that female allies don't get that much screen time. So it's kind of hard to like fall for them. But even when they do, it's like, they're just so like innocent. Like, it's just hard for me to imagine romancing them because that's not the personality that I tend to go for. But Ava had just enough sass and just enough bite in her that I was like, oh, there's something like kind of like charismatic and interesting about her. Definitely Ava changed my mind hardcore. In the last like 25 chapters, I was like, I think I'm gonna jump ship and go with her.
My thing with my first two loves is I actually shipped Mason and Noah.
Oh, I think they'd be fucking amazing together.
They had better chemistry with each other than they had with the main character.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with you.
Like, I'm just like, clearly they're in love with each other. Like, one of the chapters where like they had to figure out what the password to the safe was, and he puts in Mason's jersey. He's like, "You remember my jersey number?" Like, clearly you guys love.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They had some hardcore bromances where I was like, I feel like I'm interrupting the scene now.
For me, it was Drake from the Royal Romance. I'm in a group chat on Twitter with Amber, Ari, Jerry, and Emma. We formed the group chat when my first two loves was going on. And then, I got really close to them. And I would probably consider them best friends at this point, even though I never met them in real life. It kind of went from just discussing choices to, just discussing everything. The majority of us, we play like the female route, but we have Ari who plays the male route. So whenever I'm curious about a male route, I'll be like, hey, Ari, play that route for me so I can know what happens without having to do it myself. If you follow her, she's at Choices OOF, I think.
Yeah.
But if you follow her, she's a Drake Walker fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she shared like little tidbits that, you don't get unless you take like, I love Hannah from The Royal Romance, and I'm just like, I don't understand why somebody wouldn't love Hannah, but it makes sense because I took the premium scenes with Hannah, so you get all those extra tidbits.
Yeah.
But then she said, like Drake went to college, quit to support Liam. I'm like, that's stuff that's all interesting that you don't get unless you pay for those scenes, which is sad because you're missing so much out of the characters because they hide them behind a paywall.
Well, I think that's exactly like when you talk about what like the point that I was making earlier, how like all of them are too sweet. Like to me, Hannah, I was like, she's too fucking sweet. I don't want to romance her. Like I would have never paid for any of her scenes. I think the plot line about like her parents and stuff was interesting, but outside of that, I really didn't want to spend any money on her.
Yeah, you get so much more when you take the scenes because you see her insecurities and how she overcomes those insecurities. Beautiful character growth from being the timid, shy person she was at the beginning of the book when you walk in on her getting dressed.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that unless you take the scenes. Same way, like, to me, Drake was always just a boring character, like Chris from Freshman. I was just like, no, there's nothing to this guy. He's just a guy who drinks whiskey.
Yeah.
But if you take the scenes, you see all the little things, how, he was loyal, he went to college and then he quit to be loyal to Liam. And you see those little bits. And, had I not started talking with Ari on Twitter, I would have never saw that. So, I understand having premium scenes, but I wish they would allow some character development without having to spend that. Otherwise, they're just a blank character, really. Like you said, like,
yeah.
Hannah's just a sweet little girl who doesn't really add anything unless you take the scenes where you get to see their growth.
I think even if they could pull just like a little bit of the dialogue and just kind of hint at it, and then Because sometimes like before you pick like certain diamond options, there'll be like a narration box where they're like, hey, if you like take this diamond scene, you can like do this, this, and this because of paying for this diamond scene. Like I think a lot of their kind of character development stuff would kind of benefit from that. So that way you kind of know a little bit of a hint of like what you're getting with the diamond option and what you're learning about them. Like I think that would be good if they kind of sprinkle that in like a little bit, because otherwise, you're just like, oh, it's just going to be like sweet, fluffy kind of talk with the character, which, like, depending on how forced LI is, like, maybe
Yeah,
you're like, I've already gotten that with them. So, like, I don't necessarily want to spend even more time with
yeah, like
them. If they're like, you could learn more about this person's family by taking the diamond scene, you're like, oh, yeah, it actually might be interesting to learn that.
yeah, like Hannah, one of the early scenes, like you can pay to watch her play piano, and it ends up it shows you how her parents forced her to learn piano. She got to the point where she hated it because every time she played it had to be like a performance, whether she's performing. One of the last times she played horribly so that her parents wouldn't ask her to play anymore, because they're like, well, if she's not going to play well, we can't show her off. And then, MC's like, thank you, while you're playing for me. She's like, now I play for myself. If I play in front of most other people, I'll play horribly because I don't want to be a sideshow.
And see, I never would have known that because I never even bothered, like, with her scenes, I never even bothered to, like, try to look them up on YouTube, to be honest. I was just like, all right, that's pretty much meat and potatoes. What? I was like, she's sweet and innocent and she's cute, but, like, I'm not going to spend money on that. Which, like, to be fair, I mean, Liam to me as a character wasn't that much more interesting.
Well, and that's the thing with all of them. None of them are interesting if you don't take the scenes. You need those.
Yeah.
They make you take those scenes so that you get their character developed.
Because I remember like when they were initially kind of like I hadn't really taken that many scenes for like the royal romance, like, and when they initially were like, oh, which ally, like when you get the final choice of like which ally you're going with, I was like, I guess I'll go with Liam because like why would I settle for like being a duchess when like I could be a princess? Like why would I do that? So for me, it was more about like status. I don't think I really like cared. Like I really like the friend dynamic and I like the writing. Like I liked a lot of the side characters, but I wasn't super like kind of engrossed in the romance part of it, which probably isn't good because it's literally called a royal romance. So probably miss on that part.
It really just comes down to whether you take the diamonds or not, whether you get a lot of the romance. All right, so next one, which love interest makes the least amount of sense? I had two that I feel like shouldn't have been love interest, but I can't really say they don't make sense. That would be Sloane and Imogen. I just think they should have just been friends.
Mm-hmm.
But the two that to me don't make sense at all is Lily from Bloodbound
Yeah.
and Maxwell from The Royal.
Yeah, and Maxwell was so shoehorned in there at the very end because I remember there was like a certain book when they gave you like a 30 diamond scene. I remember it was so random. Like I was like, when did I get the chance to fuck Maxwell? I was like, when did
Yeah,
that come up?
like when you get to the point when Liam proposes and you can say no and then say who you actually want to be with. I
Mm-hmm.
expected, I'm going to choose Hannah or Drake, and then Maxwell's there. I was like, what? Where did this
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah, exactly.
And apparently there's a 30 diamond scene earlier. And up to that point, I guess there's not, but there's a 30 diamond scene where if you play it a certain way, he shows like romantic feelings towards you, or you can play it a way
Mm-hmm.
that's like brotherly love, which to me, he was always just, he's a brother.
Yeah.
Lily should only be a best friend. Like I was shocked when I'm like, why is Maxwell a choice here? Like where did this come from? And then I'm replaying everything through my head. I'm just like, okay, so he gave me a dog, and
He gave me a
he
dog.
he talked me into coming to romance Liam, where I still don't see any romance here at all.
Mine are Elena from Perfect Match. I just feel like she felt, I don't know, I feel like we didn't really get that many like choices with her and there wasn't a lot of dialogue that kind of convinced me that she liked me. So the few times that you got to pick her, like romance scenes with her, it just did not make any sense. It felt like it was just kind of added in there, like just tossed in the plot. And it's like, hey, if you want to kiss her, you can. I was like, cool.
Yeah, like to me that should have just been a fling, not a love interest.
Yeah, I mean, she did not act like a love interest at all. Mark Antony, from a Cartesian of Rome. people were going fucking crazy for this character when this book was being released, and I was like, I don't get it. It's like he hates you, but they made him an ally, and I was like, what? Where is the appeal? I'm like, he's an awful person.
Yeah. Which love interest did you fall out of love with?
Noah, from my first two loves. I think he had a really good thing going, and then he just started getting fucking angry at everybody, and I was like, this is no longer cute.
When he confronts Ava, or over, I feel like they started ruining him a little earlier than that, but that one really bugged me.
Sorry, which chapter are you talking about?
I mean, there's 100 chapters. I don't know, but it's later when Ava's actually a love interest. After the New Year's party, Ava runs into Noah and his sister in a park, and then he talks about how even though he knows Ava would be good for the main character, almost like marking his territory, and it just rubbed me the
So,
wrong
to be
way.
honest, at the time, that was not what had turned me off from him. And actually, because I had misunderstood some of the dialogue from the chapter, that I'm not mad at Noah about that specific interaction because I think it could be, I think Ava was kind of referring to one thing and Noah was referring to another thing. Because yes, him kind of going up to Ava and being like, "Yeah, I'm not going to back down," was kind of assholey, but I also feel like all of the allies did that to each other. So it's like
Yeah,
if you're going
that's
to call that assholey, then like Ava's an asshole for doing it, Mason's an asshole for doing it, right?
true.
But like I think the thing that people got upset about with that dialogue is when Ava was like, "Oh, you've actually done me a favor." Like Ava said that to Noah and Noah responded to it like poorly, right?
Yeah, it's really the dialogue they chose to do. I mean, you're right. Like everybody has moments where they're
Yeah.
horrible.
And at the time when I had heard Ava say like, "Oh, you've actually done me a favor," I was under the impression that she was referring to him making an ass of himself with Mason at the party, which the which like the MC kind of told him like scram, and that kind of gave you the alone time to like hook up with Ava. So I thought that's what Ava was referring to. I did not realize that Ava was talking about helping his sister learn a dance and it helping her figure out her career that she wanted. Like I
Yeah.
didn't piece those two things together.
Okay.
So that's why I was like, oh, well, to me, it's like if she's going to say that, if she's going to be like, yeah, I kind of got to fuck her because like y'all
You
two
were too.
fucked up. Yeah. So like I was like, I totally understand why Noah said that. But with that being said, even though I know what Ava was referring to, I'm still not necessarily mad at Noah for that because I can totally see, like, I made that fucking mistake. So I can see how they tried to write it to where he thought she was referring to the MC.
Okay.
It was like other dialogue and I can't remember the specifics, but it just got to a point where he was just kind of getting like abrupt and like rough with like everybody. It was like everything had like the slightest situation he was just super fucking angry about. And like I was like I can't. You're just picking fights with everybody and it's miserable. Like and in comparison Ava was so sweet. So yeah, I definitely kind of fell out of, love with him. Another one was like Queen Bee, the professor.
Were you Ian or Eva?
Yes. I played Ian personally. There's those couple of moments towards the end where like they're trying to force a conversation with B and B's like, "Yo, like now's not the time, bro. Like they kind of know about it, so I got to stay away from you." And the scene where the professor bursts into the auditorium and is like, "Yo, we got to talk right now." I'm like, dude, you got to calm down because like you're making it painfully obvious that we're involved with each other. And it was those kind of interactions where the professor was chasing you around the campus where I was like, oh no, like I
And that's very similar to some of the stuff they did with Ina or Ian. Like I played Ina. Very similar to what they did with Gabe, where they're like, oh, let's hook up, and then they're like, oh, we can't be together because I'm your teacher.
yeah.
I mean, it's worse with Gabe because he just. I mean, at least you got to hook up with Ian or Ina. At least you got some sex out of it. For Dave, he's just like, let's kiss. Never mind. So for me, for that one, the first one that came to mind was Caitlin. I absolutely loved Caitlin in book one of the Freshman, and then they just made her horrible in book two when she joined the band.
Yeah, I agree. And that was awful timing too, because that was when they had like introduced Zig, right? And at the time, like I had not committed to a relationship with Caitlyn, but I was kind of like flirting around with it. Her and I were hanging out. And then that's when they had kind of pinned Caitlyn and Zig against each other because she was like, he fucked up the concert by like starting a fight, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Now you're angry at me and him for this. And like, I didn't fucking do anything. So that was kind of the moment where I was like, it could have been Caitlyn, but goddamn, she really pissed me the
Yeah,
fuck
like
off.
I committed to Caitlyn at the end of book one.
Uh huh.
We went to the prom together, and I was like, we're girlfriend. And then in book two, it just slowly, she joined the band, and it's just like horrible, and ignoring, and then I was like, I think I'm gonna jump ship to Sig, and then I realized Becca was a love interest, and I'm like, oh, this could be an interesting story. And I liked how they didn't jump right in with Becca. They slow played it where, first there's, you hook up with, if you're single, you can hook up with her and then have another hook up with her. And then in book four, you know, slowly go from enemies to friends to lovers.
Yeah.
But what they did with Caitlyn was just awful. Like they just
Awful.
made her and really if you look at it, she was really a selfish character the entire time. I think in book one, I just really didn't care for Chris or James.
Oh, Chris was so boring.
Yeah, so I really didn't care about either one of them, and so it was like kind of Caitlyn's there, and I had good fun. They had fun scenes with her, but really she's selfish the entire time. You just don't
Mm-hmm.
really see it till you're in a relationship with her in book two.
Yeah.
Because book one, you're just like, I just don't want to be a Chris or James.
Yeah.
So next one, basically, which one that's a standalone book, always meant to be a standalone book, do you feel like had a premise that could have had a book two?
I feel like a lot of people are going to expect me to say Ride or Die, but I'm actually okay with Ride or Die not getting a sequel.
Like if it had an announced sequel, I think that disqualifies it from this question. So something that
See,
was
but
clearly
my inkling is that I don't think that they actually wanted it to be a sequel. Like I don't think they ever planned for it to be a sequel and then they decided to do it because of like audience reaction. Like I see where you're coming from, but I also think
okay.
that like Ride or Die was intended to be a standalone. And I think
All
like
right.
people were like, "Oh my god, please, please, please." And they probably saw enough Diamond Redemptions that they were like, "Okay, I guess we'll go ahead to do it." But I think honestly I truly do believe that the reason why they decided to not go for it is because they were like, well, we felt pressure to because of like audience reception, but we realized that we had nowhere to take it.
Didn't the writer didn't the writer of the book one leave as well, or started working on something else?
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much said that they didn't really have the team that had like the passion for it anymore. So I think that was pretty much the writer being like, it ended where I needed it to end, and I'm not going to write anything else, which to a certain degree I kind of respect from the writer's point of view. I just wish that they had come to that conclusion ahead of announcing the finale, or announcing the sequel. I think a Cortesian of Rome could have been like a good one to have a sequel because it certainly lived in a universe that was interesting enough for me to have want to see a sequel. Now, if you ask me, V, what sequel would you have imagined for it? I wouldn't be able to tell you.
I think that one's hard because that one. I mean, even though it's fictionalized, it had a hard ending where killing Caesar was kind of where it was going the entire time. And so where do you go after that? Because the conflict's gone. You killed Caesar.
Before we continue with the rest of the episode, I do want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, theories, or comments that you would like to be included in a future episode, please email us at playchoicespodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to specify whether you want to be shouted out or not, otherwise all emails will be anonymous. Questions can be related to books we've recorded episodes on, books that we haven't discussed yet, or even questions that you'd like to ask us. Alternatively, you can go to our Ask box on playchoicespodcast.tumblr.com and submit a question. Just specify that it's for the podcast and we'll be sure to include it. And back to our episode. Platinum could have been so good if they had done that world tour. I would have loved to see them go on a world tour. Oh my god.
Platinum's on my list as well because I got a few. But so Platinum was on my list, but I would have. I don't even need the world tour. I'd rather see them. How do you survive as an indie artist? Because at the
Yeah.
end, she decided to go indie. So how
Yeah,
does an indie
yeah.
artist survive in the music industry and still be successful? And I think that's an interesting story.
Well, it wasn't just that they went indie too. They were going to start their own record label, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I mean by indie, small
Mm-hmm.
role. I mean, and then sure, of course, Avery, you're gonna have fans built in, but how do you survive being a small label competing
Yeah,
against the larger labels?
that would have been a really great plot line. I feel like across the void, they could have. I would have appreciated more background into how the war started because I feel like we just kind of got tossed into it. We didn't really get that much background of it. So if they could have done one that was like less like hookup-y, less sex driven, and one that was more like plot and like conflict driven for the war, that would have been really
Yeah,
interesting.
and I think you and Kat touched on it. Like, you got the two sides, but you have no clue what the two sides are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like at the end, they kind of try to lead you, like, oh, maybe this one could be a little bit worse, but they're both kind of terrible. Nightbound, I mean, come on. Just there's a whole universe there they
I
could have
don't
played with.
understand how Nightbound didn't have a second book.
Yeah, I don't get how it was like Bloodbound was so well received. And like you're trying to tell me that Nightbound?
I think Nightbound was well received too. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, they clearly created it as a one-off. I think just to fill up time between. Yeah, I think it was between book two and three.
Mhm.
Kind of like let's just use this to fill up space and release a book,
Yeah.
and then. But I don't know. Like they could have had so much with that.
Even if you don't use the same characters, I mean, there's a whole fucking universe you could have taken from, you know?
For me, the other three I had, other than Platinum, was I think with every heartbeat could have had a good one where the second book could have been her recovering from the loss of Dakota and moving on. Like, how do you move on with life after loss? I think that could have been, I mean, if written well, and if it's the same writers who wrote with every heartbeat, I'm confident that they could have wrote a good second book with, how do you move on from losing the love of your life. And then the other two, Fail of Secrets and Heist in Monaco. I think both of those could have been really good as the MC stays, and then whether it's a different cast, like with Heist, I guess you can use the same cast, just a different heist. And with Fail of Secrets, just another mystery. Because Fail of Secrets is just an amazing standalone book.
Oh, it's
Um,
so good.
it's the perfect blend of suspense, drama, and romance.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed Villa Secrets. Honestly, I think it's going to be one of those that I'm like actually very excited for whenever I start to reread it for the podcast.
Yeah, I definitely can't wait for you guys to cover that one and
Yeah.
listen to what you guys take out of it when you're reading it. So, next one, worst ending to a canceled series.
Can we just go ahead and say It Lives is the answer because what the fuck?
To me, Hero's the answer, but I understand it. It lives. I understand the argument for It Lives, but have you played Hero?
I have played Hero and I was really bummed, but I think my bummed factor was like larger for It Lives than it was Hero.
So to me, I'm huge on comic book stuff. When I first saw it, I'm like, oh, a comic book, a comic book story. I'm gonna read it. I loved it. I paid for all the diamond scenes. I got the robot. I got like the expensive superhero suit. And then it ends with you being stuck on a planet with the robot. And it's like, well, don't worry, your hero will return in book two. And then 3 years later, like, yeah, it's canceled. Not even like just because they just dragged you along for so long waiting for book two. Because it was one of the earliest books. And then they're like, oh, it's coming, we're working on it. And then at one point they're like, we have a script, which is, we're working on art for it. And then I'm like, this isn't coming. Like, I don't care what they say. But then they kept dragging, like, oh, it's coming, it's in the works, we'll have more updates soon. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's canceled. You clearly knew it was going to be canceled for a while. Just don't drag people along. And I think that's one of the reasons so many people were upset when they did that blog post. Because you dragged us along for so long with
Oh
this
my
stuff.
god. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous how
Like, oh,
long. I mean,
we'll
what?
have information soon. Like, here was legit like 3 years.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at when it was released. Most Wanted came out in August of 2016 and Hero came out in July of 2017.
Yeah, and then so 2021, it was just the spring when they announced cancellations, right? Yeah, so 2017, that's 4 years of dragging people along. It's a piss off when you spend that long waiting for a sequel, whether it's It Lives or, Hero or Rise to Die. We can move on to the next question. So the next one was the one you suggested earlier. Who's the most forced love interest in Choices? I feel like there's a clear answer for this one.
Really? You think there's a clear answer? Because I feel like there's a lot of them.
No, there's absolutely a lot of them, but I think there's a clear answer for most forced.
I don't, because my first one is like Liam from the World of Romance is like, because you literally spent like 2 books competing for this man's affections. And then, of course, like my next example is Logan from Ride or Die, because we didn't even really get the option to like talk to another ally until a couple of chapters in. So those are kind of like my first 2 kind of gut feelings, but I want to know what your most forced is.
Ethan from Open Heart.
Oh my god, how did I not?
I was like, how is she not? We've had enough discussions of how forced Ethan is. Like,
yeah.
They legit had to go on a hiatus because not only we're going to kill Raph, but they were like, oh, we're going to give the other interests more scenes.
I will tell you why it didn't come to mind is because I never finished Open Heart.
Okay.
That's why. Because I never got to experience the full force of what forced Ethan is, right? Because I feel like that
Ethan
primarily
Hart.
came in like, yeah, Ethan Hart. I feel like that primarily came in the back half of book 2 and book 3, which I did finish book 2. At the time, even though I knew they were rewriting it to remove the Raphael scene, I don't think that I understood that the original plot was to kill off him in order to give more time to Ethan. Like, I don't think I had connected all of that.
I mean, even then, like, book 2, Raph wasn't even really a love interest. Like, they gave him a girlfriend and stopped giving him
he wasn't.
scenes.
I was so fucking pissed off at the beginning of that book because here's the thing, I didn't even really romance Raph in book 1. Like, he wasn't like my live choice. I'm a Bryce stan if you've listened to the Open Heart episodes. Yeah, I just remember that, like, in the very beginning, it was like first chapter, it's like, hey, Raph, oh, is this your girlfriend? I said, girlfriend? The fuck?
Where did this come from?
Yeah, I was like, what? I was like, man, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, that really sucks if you're like a Raph stan, you know?
Yeah, like, I mean, I wasn't Raph either. Like, I don't think I chose any of the intro. Like, I think the one I took the most from was Jackie scenes, but I wouldn't say I romanced anybody in it.
Yeah.
But, like, book 1, I wanted Sienna. And, like, they followed the storyline where, like, you feel like it's going to go away, like, Passport to Romance with Marissa, where you convince her to break up with her boyfriend and then you get into a relationship with her. So I'm like, that's what they're going to do with Sienna, and I'm okay with it this time because I like Sienna. And then they break up, and then she's like, oh, now I'm interested in that nurse. And I'm like, what? I just spent all that time thinking I was going to get to romance Sienna, and then they did the thing with Aurora. So, like, you can go to her reunion and be like, oh, this is my girlfriend, and then be like, oh, no, not going to romance her either.
Okay. No, I think that's a totally fair answer. I just don't think it was going to jump out at me because even though Ethan was definitely a forced ally in book 1, I don't think that it became that bad until the later books, which, like, I haven't played.
Yeah. I mean, Ethan's so forced that he even gets a scene in With Every Heartbeat.
Oh my god, yeah.
There's a premium scene where you can interview Ethan, and at the end of the interview, he has a smile like he's taken at the MC from Open Heart.
Yeah.
And
yes,
I'm like,
I remember those.
This is so forced that I even have to deal with Ethan in another book.
Yeah, no, It's like normally I think that it's pretty cool when Pixelberry does like a kind of like a call out to a different book.
I have no problem with cameos.
Yeah.
Like, I love Caitlin's cameo. I mean, as much as Caitlin annoys me, I love her cameo in Platinum. But that one was it just felt so forced to me. Like, you have the option of, like, who you texting with. He's like, nobody, and it has a big smile. So it's like, I know what you want. The writers are obsessed with you.
Well, I honestly think it wouldn't have been so disturbing if, like, people had actually liked Ethan at that point, right? If they hadn't forced him an open heart, like it would have been more enjoyable and more accepted by the overall fandom, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you got the people who actually like Ethan saying he's too forced, you know it's a problem.
Yes. Because definitely Ethan stans were turning on Ethan at the end of Open Heart Book 3. And like I didn't even play the book, but I at least saw the chatter, online.
Yeah, like I mean, he had his fans right till the end. Even the people who romance Ethan, who are like, "Oh, I love that I get all these great scenes."
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not fair to the people who are romancing the other people. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
can, because other books you have the argument like, "Oh, he's not that forced. You got this scene," but then Open Heart, you can like, "Oh, this is clearly they spend all this time on Ethan and no time on
Yeah.
anybody else."
Yeah.
Other than Ethan, I think the other one would be Chris in book one of the Freshman. Specifically book one. I mean, once you make the
Yeah,
choice that,
I agree. I with that caveat, then yeah, I would say yeah.
I mean, if you don't romance, they kind of just forget about him. Like everybody else,
Yeah,
like,
he does kind of fade to the background after
because
book
everybody
one.
else, you have the option of hooking Caitlin up with her band member. You have the
Mm-hmm.
option of hooking James up with the girl that works on the newspaper, and then Chris gets nothing.
Yeah.
But book one, he's basically shut down.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, so what's going on with you and Chris? I'm like, nothing. Nothing is going on with me and Chris. Nothing at all.
You're like, I haven't talked to this. You said every interaction I've ever had with this man has been against my will.
When they make you confront him at the sorority party, I'm like, I don't want to confront him. I don't care if he's with Becca.
Yeah. I remember that being a big plot point, and I was like, didn't I just meet this man like yesterday?
Yeah, like I walked into him and he made me drop my books. But I don't
Yeah.
care that much about this guy.
Yeah, pretty much. I definitely felt like that was a very forced plot point on their behalf, definitely.
Alright, so one last question. So this one is, which long series ran out of steam faster, the Freshman or the Royal Romance?
I say definitely the Royal Romance. And if I had to sum up my thoughts, I would say the Freshman definitely, I think, was overextended. I think they could have made less freshman books. If they really wanted to keep it to the going through the entire college year, I feel like they could have sustained a different plot line, and instead of making it like, what do they have, 3 to 4 freshman books, they could have made that kind of like into the senior, junior, or the sophomore, junior, and senior. But overall, I mean, the book had me until the end. The series had me until the end. Did it definitely lose steam? Absolutely. Yes, it did. But it still had me until the end. I never finished the Royal Romance series because I don't like children, and the entire plot became like, by the time that you become the Duchess or Princess or Queen, whatever the title is, by the time that I got that title, I was already over it. And then they had an entire plot line about having a child, and I don't like children. I'm not a child person. So I didn't want to play an entire book that was focused on a baby.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I definitely agree. And also, they had almost an entire book on a ranch.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my
Which,
god.
you've talked before. I think, actually, like I said, I re-listened to the Choice of Chat ones, and you guys went into big details on that ranch, so I won't rehash that. But the ranch was horrible.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with the Royal Romance is the moment you reject Liam, almost everything after that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense if it's not
Because
with Liam.
the entire series is written as you as the queen. Because
Yep.
as a duchess, you have way too much power.
Yep.
It makes no sense after that because they give a duchess way too much power. Like you've got more power than the king. One of the ways I enjoyed more, which I know is not canon at all, but I think I mentioned to you, I don't know if I tweeted it or DM with you, that in my head, Liam is gay.
Yes.
And that's why he talked to you and well, for me and Hannah, or between Drake or Maxwell,
Into having the child.
having the child, because he doesn't want to commit to somebody else, and he doesn't want to come out of the closet. So in my head, it only makes sense if he's gay.
I honestly think the Royal Romance could have benefited from being a single LI book.
Oh, absolutely.
Which they weren't ready to, kind of what is it? They weren't ready to pursue that, I don't think, at the time. I don't think they had it in their mind to do a single LI book at the time that the Royal Romance was created,
No,
but
not
I
at
think
all.
it would have made way more sense for a sequel.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because once you reject Liam, like I said, nothing else makes sense. It makes no sense that the Duchess has that much power.
Because when you really think about it, I mean, Liam had like 1,000 other suitors, and it's like, couldn't you just go with one of them?
You can't tell me you can't find somebody to marry and have a hero.
Yeah, because I just don't believe you.
And that's why in my head, the storyline only makes sense if he's gay and doesn't want to come out of the closet. And freshman, yes, it was long. You probably could have had maybe 2 books for the freshman and then 2
I
books for the
agree.
sophomore. It definitely dragged on more, but other than the junior, it was able to hold my attention right till the
Yeah,
end. And
definitely.
the storylines made sense. Like, you fall in and out of love with people, you have arguments with people. So, yeah, so long story. My answer is Royal Romance, definitely like longer than it needed to be.
Thank you so much for joining me on recording. I know this was like super long overdue, so I'm glad we finally were able to do it. Is there anything that you want to plug before we get off?
I have nothing to plug. I'm not really I don't really do anything. I'll do what Kath did. Go give blood. Lots
Yeah,
of people need blood.
go give
I'll,
blood.
I'll make it a tradition. Go give blood.
Yeah, that's where every single time someone doesn't know where they or doesn't have anything they want to plug, we're just gonna say, "Go give blood."
Yeah, I've donated 25 times in my life,
Oh,
so
nice.
I've done my part. I'll continue doing my part, but everybody else should.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thank everybody for listening. So I guess we'll see you all on the next episode.
Yes, it was fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye bye.